Breaking news, peanut stuff. President Trump just using those words. In a brand new Reuters interview, they just actually left. They're pushing their headlines out now. He was asked about people who worked for him who had contacts with Russia. His answer was, it's peanut stuff. Keep in mind, by our count, at least 16 Trump associates have had contacts with Russians during the campaign or the transition. And he also said in this interview, the payments made to women who said they had affairs with him were not campaign contributions. Pamela Brown is out front. Pamela, what else is the president saying in this interview? Literally, these headlines are just crossing here.
Right. I'm just reading the headlines that are coming in real time here, Aaron. And what stands out to me is a few things the president is talking about in regards to the Russia investigation. As you pointed out, he's now claiming that contacts that members of his campaign, his associates during the campaign, as well as the transition with Russians, is, quote, peanut stuff. Contrast that with what the president said last year when asked if there were any communications between Russians and Trump campaign members, and he says there weren't any. Well, now that here we are, almost 2 years later, and we know of at least 16 Trump associates communicating with Russians, and now he's saying, look, this is all peanut stuff. Here is a list of some of those Trump associates who have spoken to Russians, and obviously the Mueller investigation still weighs heavily on the president. Still, he is trying to downplay it in this interview with Reuters. Also, in this interview, he's talking about Michael Cohen and saying that payments to women were not a campaign contribution, talking about payments to Stormy Daniels and Karen McDougal. As you know, Michael Cohen, his former personal attorney, pleaded guilty to paying these women in violation of campaign finance laws because those payments weren't reported, and prosecutors argue that influence the outcome of the election. And on Friday, in those court documents, Aaron, prosecutors said for the first time that Cohen made those payments at the direction and coordination with Trump, then candidate Trump, who was called individual one in those court documents. But now the president is claiming he did not direct Michael Cohen to do so. He said those payments weren't even a campaign contribution. And he said that he was relying on his lawyer, Michael Cohen, to do his thing, basically distancing himself from his attorney. He will be sentenced tomorrow. He will be appearing before a judge tomorrow in his sentencing, where prosecutors from Southern District, as well as a special counsel Mueller's office, will be in attendance. So really interesting here to see these headlines from the president during this Reuters interview, where he is downplaying all things having to do with Russia and those charged in the investigation, Aaron.
All right. Thank you very much, Pamela. And let's, as more headlines come on down here, we're going to discuss them. I want to go straight, though, to Harry Sandick, former assistant U.S. attorney for the Southern District of New York, and the former assistant secretary for the Department of Homeland Security under President Obama, Juliette Kayyem. Harry, okay. Yep. He says it's not a campaign contribution. Number one, it wasn't a campaign contribution. If it were, it's only civil. So, by the way, already putting it out there. If it were, well, it's not that big of a deal. There's no violation based on what we did, okay?
Well, I mean, that's going to be for other people to decide. He can't unilaterally.
By the way, that's him asking, okay. I'm not asking you the question in that way.
Right. Okay. I mean, that's not going to be for him to decide. Look, the timing of the payment, they could have made this payment long in advance to buy non-disclosure from the two women, but the timing of it just weeks before the campaign. You even had Rudy Giuliani saying a few months ago, you know, what a shock it would have been if, I'm paraphrasing, what a shock it would have been if these stories had come out in mid-October, just before the election. So the timing does not seem like a mere coincidence. And as to whether it's criminal or civil, that has to do with, in part, what the president intended when he and Cohen together made these payments. And if he knew that it was a violation of law, then it could be criminal. Otherwise, it would be civil. But either way, as people have said in the days since the Cohen filings on Friday, this is the type of thing that could rise to the level of impeachable acts, even if it isn't a crime.
And so let's talk about that, Juliette, because the quote here from the Reuters interview, just crossing, when the president was asked about impeachment, quote, it's hard to impeach somebody who hasn't done anything wrong and who's created the greatest economy in the history of our country. Talk about mixing and matching topics.
Right. And I mean, you don't even know what to do with that except say, that he did do something wrong, obviously, and a number of courts or a number of prosecutors' offices are already finding that, including U.S. attorneys' offices that he appointed. This is part of the sort of defense that all Donald Trump has left now. So if you look at the two different pieces of where we are now, the payoff for the sex, which Trump seems to be admitting the sex occurred, but that the payment wasn't for campaign purposes, and then the Russia stuff, Donald Trump's options are closing around him. So this idea that this is just peanuts is the most recent defense. It started with there were no contacts, then the contacts I didn't know about, and now it's that Obama had contacts. That was one defense at some stage, and then now it's the peanuts defense, which we'll see.
Because Juliette, to your point, I just want to interject to say, during the campaign, right, and after, even afterwards, he said there was no one on his campaign had any contacts with Russians. There was no discussions, no nothing. Now it's, okay, I guess it was a whole lot of people, but it's peanuts, right? I mean, it's very clear here he's moving the line on both of these issues, by the way, and they are two separate issues, collusion/conspiracy with Russia and possible felony payments to mistresses, right? These are two separate issues, but he's moving the goalposts on both, right?
That's exactly right. I mean, then because that's his only defense at this stage. Because what has happened in the last 3 to 4 weeks is certainly that it's no longer Democrats saying he did this. It is now prosecutors who are saying he did this, as well as his own people saying he did this. So while Michael Cohen is relevant, a lot of us are waiting for tonight, I guess by midnight, for the Michael Flynn motion to come down, because we'll get a sense of how much Michael Flynn spoke about some of these no contacts or peanut contacts, as Donald Trump is saying.